What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Ben on Sports. And you can probably see what's coming, the NHL playoff preview and prediction episode. Did the NBA one earlier this week. Now, now it's time for the NHL one, both of which are starting this weekend. And for my money, or at least in my opinion, if you ask me, I can only have one North American professional sport playoff. I'm going to pick the NHL. It's one of the best two playoffs in all of sports to watch, postseasons in all sports. Obviously, March Madness college basketball is right there for me as well. And as much as I love the NFL and the Super Bowl, I think the NHL has a better playoff or a better postseason to watch. So yeah, I am personally ecstatic for the NHL playoffs. It always brings out fantastic hockey, and I hope all the listeners take time to watch it, even if you're not a big hockey person, because playoff hockey, as good as regular season hockey is, playoff hockey is even better. So without further ado, let's get into it. So here you see I just had the final standings. Again, the top three in each division, and then the two wild cards in each conference are the most points. And this year, and the Capitals, one of the most unlikely contenders of the year. Capitals barely made the playoffs last year. Were expected to be a wild card team if they made it again this year. Didn't just win their division, first seed in the conference. They have home ice over everybody in the playoffs other than the Jets, second most points in the league. Hurricanes and Devils, the Metro, we've kind of known what it was going to end up in. I feel like for 2 months, Capitals pulled out to a big lead and kind of ran away. The Hurricanes and Devils were second and third, and kind of separated from each other in the rest of the pack. But those are the only three Metro teams that made it, because both wildcard teams are Atlantic Division teams. Maple Leafs almost ran down the Capitals, falling 3 points short. But they got the one seed in the Atlantic, meaning they get to avoid what has been in recent years a 2-3 series that is really difficult, as the Maple Leafs, Lightning, and Panthers have all been really good in the Bruins the last couple of years, and you really want to get the one seed and play the wild card team instead. And then a battle of Florida lining up for the first round, and what might be, probably should be, the best matchup in the Eastern Conference in the first round, the Battle of Florida, Lightning and Panthers. For those of you who don't know, 2020, 2021, and 2022, the Lightning went to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals, won 2 of them. In 2023 and 2024, the Panthers went to the next 2. So the last 5 Stanley Cup appearances in the Eastern Conference have been from a Florida team, and one of those 2 Florida teams will be eliminated in the first round, playing each other. I got to tell you, I'd be looking out for both of them. Anyway, and then the wild card. Both wildcard teams, as I said, are from the Atlantic, and the Senators are going to be part of the Atlantic Division and play the Maple Leafs, setting up another regional battle in the Battle of Ontario. For my American viewers that aren't good at geography, that is a Canadian province, which is kind of like a state. Toronto and Ottawa, the Senators and the Maple Leafs, decent sized rivalry. I believe Ontario is the most populated province in Canada. Don't 100%, but just a little fun fact for American viewers. After all, Canada is, as much as I hate to say it, the best hockey team in the world, and you can't dispute that after the Four Nations Cup earlier this year. And then the Canadians, from Quebec, right? The French speakers. Been a long time since they've made the playoffs. They made it this year, and they're going to face a Capitals team that is second in the league in points. In the Western Conference, the President's Trophy winners, the Winnipeg Jets. Phenomenal season, really good team. And after that phenomenal start they got off to the year, it felt like it was 2 months into the season before they lost the game. The Jets win the President's Cup, trying to avoid the President's Trophy curse. And then the Stars and the Avalanche, probably 2 of the other best teams in the entire NHL, not just the Western Conference. The Central Division is loaded, and it showed by them being the 2 wildcard teams as well. Just kind of like the Atlantic, 5 of the 8 teams in each division are from one of the 2 divisions. It is not split at 4 this year. Yeah, Stars and Avalanche, both great teams, both with some phenomenal players, some great star power, both made big trades at the deadline. And then the Pacific Division, the Golden Knights, I felt like were quiet all year. Nobody talked about them a whole lot, and they're third most points in the NHL, winning the Pacific Division, and they're pretty good. They have a very balanced approach. Um, I don't want to get too much into it because obviously I'm going to talk about matchups a little bit later on. The Kings, kind of a surprise, I think, this year, surpassing the Oilers. The Kings have, I believe, the sixth most points in the NHL this year. You can see it right here. Really good season out of the Kings. I don't know if people expected them to suck, but I don't know if they expected them to do that good. And then the Oilers, can the best player in hockey and two of the top 3 or 4 players in hockey on that team finally get their first Stanley Cup? You feel like it has to happen eventually. They didn't end the season particularly well, but I'm not going to count out Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in the playoffs, and I don't think you should either. And then here in the wild card, the Minnesota Wild, dealing with a lot of injuries in the best division in hockey, and they found a way to get the first wild card spot, which means they get to avoid going to the Central Division, and they'll be in the Pacific Division, which, while still isn't preferred, probably a little bit easier than the Central Division would be if you want to make a run. And then the Blues, man, I'm getting strong 2019 vibes. How about you? Way out of the playoffs. They fire their coach halfway through the season. Bennington starts stepping up. They go on a 12-game winning streak to get into the playoffs, and it's giving me very strong 2019 vibes when the Blues were not great most of the year. They found a way into the playoffs, got hot at the right time, and went all the way to beat, who was it? The Bruins in the Stanley Cup final. Anyway. It's giving me very strong 2019 vibes, to say the least. So there's your final standings. Everybody else will go to the draft lottery. The other 16 NHL teams, if you are not mentioned here, did not make the playoffs. Here I have my playoff tiers. I have all 6 teams in a tier. Now, this tier list is not perfect. There's some teams that I think could be in multiple tiers, but I tried to force myself to cut it down and put teams in categories I believe that they should be in. For example, the contenders and sleepers, there's some cross-referencing there. But the contenders, I think, are the 5 best teams coming into the playoffs, or the teams that I perceive with the 5 best chances. Obviously, the Lightning and Panthers play each other round 1, but the Lightning and Panthers both have experience. They both have won Stanley Cups recently, and like I said, one of them has gone the last 5 years out of the Eastern Conference, and I like the way they're playing, and I think the Panthers are going to get healthy at the right time. And the Lightning have been playing really well, especially to end the year. The Stars and the Avalanche play each other first round, so one of them will be eliminated first round. But I think the Stars and the Avalanche are 2 of the 4 best teams in the NHL. I truthfully do. They're both deep and they have a lot of star power. And then obviously I have the Jets one because they won the President's Trophy, and even though that's usually a curse, they are really good. They have a really good goaltender who seems poised to win back-to-back Vezinas, including his 3rd of his career. Multiple guys that can get goals, and they have great defensive structure. So the Jets, I still think, are a contender, even if they don't have some of the star power as other teams. And some of these sleepers maybe aren't sleepers and they belong in the contenders, but yeah, either way, maybe they're not seated as high, or however you want to take it. But my contenders list is my top 5, and then the sleepers is everybody else. Hurricanes, the habitual playoff chokers. I thought their team maybe wouldn't have been as good, but they're still the Hurricanes of old, and they're getting better goaltending than I feel like they normally do, at least slightly. They're going to outshoot you, right? That's the Hurricanes' whole thing. They're going to get a lot of shots. They're going to prevent you from getting a lot of shots, and usually that's a good sign in the playoffs. One thing that they're not great at, I am a little bit worried about their special teams. You need to have good special teams in the playoffs, and the Hurricanes have been iffy there. If they can get that figured out in time for the playoffs, well, not in time, but if they can figure it out while they're in the playoffs, rather, the Hurricanes could be dangerous. Golden Knights, again, they're deep. They're not. There's no necessarily glaring weaknesses. They're good at everything. They're a deep team. They have a lot of goal scorers, some you may not have heard of before. But the Golden Knights, I like their depth, and they won a Stanley Cup over the Panthers just 2 years ago. So there's still a lot of elements of that core there. Not a lot of people talking about the Golden Knights, but maybe we should. Capitals, they were in the President's Trophy race all year. They're the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. A little bit worried about their injuries and their goaltending heading into the postseason. They also aren't in great form, but they were really, really good for most of the year, and they have depth. They have balanced scoring. Um, we'll see. Oilers, anytime you have the best player in the world and a second top four, top five player in the world, you're going to be really good. It's the same question I feel like as it normally is for the Oilers. Can they get the goaltending? I feel like defensively they're much better this year than they have been than they have been recently. But can the goalie play do as well as the defensive play? That's the only question mark I have. But their offensive play, if they get hot, it's hard to stop them from scoring. Maple Leafs, maybe Austin Matthews and their core four players aren't having, some of the crazy stats they've put up in the past, but I think that's good for the team. I think it's made them better defensively, and I think it's made them more balanced where you can't just key on two or three guys on that team and shut them down. And I think that'll help them in the postseason. I think they have better goaltending than they've had the last couple years going into the playoffs. Maybe this is finally the Maple Leafs team that finds a way to win a meaningful playoff series. And then the Blues, arguably they belong in the sea next year, and I'm fine if you want to say that. Here's the thing. Sometimes getting hot at the right time is more important than being really good the entirety of the season. The Blues are arguably the hottest team in the NHL over the last month and a half. They're scorching hot. And again, 2019, man, it's just ringing in my head. And sometimes I'm a believer in history, and sometimes I'm a believer in things like that. Am I taking too much stock into it? Probably. But I've seen this movie from the Blues 6 years ago. I don't know why it couldn't be possible again. I don't see any reason, especially if you get Bennington from the Four Nations face-off, the one that kept Canada in the game for a little bit and made some incredible stops on USA in the championship. That Bennington can do a lot to cover up flaws. This Blues team is playing super well, and because of that, I'm going to have them as a sleeper. And then in the sea next year, it's good to be a low number here, not a high number, because the high number ones are the ones I don't think can make a run. I think the Canadians and Senators are the first two in sea next year, and truthfully, I think they can make it absolute. And really, the Devils, I just think the Devils are a little bit better. All three of those teams, I think, can win 2, potentially even 3 games in the first round. I think they can make absolute panic in their first round matchups and take some games. In the Canadians and the Senators case, I don't think they're experienced enough to make a deep playoff run, even if they put the fear of God into somebody in the first round. I'd even potentially even win, even though I find that to be unlikely. They're not going to be good enough to make a playoff run, but this is something you can build on, right? The Senators and the Canadians are both largely young teams. Ascending teams, not descending teams, and you just want to get some experience and build. The Devils are here because, yeah, maybe they can beat the Hurricanes because they're so much better on special teams than the Hurricanes. I'll get into a little bit of that later. But I don't think they can win a championship or even make a conference finals run without Jack Hughes. But I think this is good experience for the rest of that roster. And this Devils team is another team that I think is going to be very good for the years to come. The Wild and Kings, I almost put both of my sleepers, and you could argue they both belong in the sleepers. And part of the reason why I didn't put them in the sleepers is because I think it would look dumb having 5-8-3. The Wild have a tough first round matchup in the Golden Knights, which is always the case if you're a wild card team. And the Wild are good; they have good goaltending, and Kaprizov is healthy. Eriksson Ek is healthy, right? Some of these guys that have missed a lot of time for them. I just think continuity is important, and I think they've done impressive things. And I don't see the Wild making it past the second round, even if they were to make a massive upset in the first round. And the Kings, maybe they beat the Oilers. I mean, they've played how many times in a row, but I don't think the Kings have enough star power, have enough everywhere. I think they're a very good defensive team. I just don't think they have enough to make a serious run. So I will see you next year to those teams. And let's get into the bracket. I know it's the same thing as the NBA. I'm spoiling all of the information, right? All of my opinion. But we're going to act like we don't see it. And I'm going to go through all of these series and then predict them as I see it. All right. Capitals and Canadians, as you already heard me say, I think the Canadians can win 2, maybe even 3 games, especially because two of the most important pieces for the Capitals are hurt right now, Thompson and Protas. It sounds like they could be getting healthy, maybe be ready midway through these series. The Capitals can't make any significant run without them, but they're hoping to get them back soon. And again, the Canadians are playing really, really well right now. Nick Suzuki dominates the Capitals historically. I was looking into some of the stats. I just don't think the Canadians are ready for a deep playoff run. I think they should be happy that they made the playoffs in a season where they probably weren't favored to, I think is a fair thing to say. And it's a great end of the season for a super young team. And now you're coming back next year and everybody's looking at you as the breakout candidate of 2025, 2026. Maybe if the Capitals don't get healthy halfway through the series, there's a way where the Canadians win. I just think eventually the Capitals' experience and veteran and their depth, I think Capitals are a little bit deeper. They truly are a four-line team, in my opinion. I think eventually that's going to win out. Capitals win and get their first series win since they won the Stanley Cup in 2018. They've been to the playoffs every year except one since then, and they have not won a first-round playoff series in any of those postseasons they've made. This is the year that should end. Hurricanes, Devils. If I'm a Canes fan, I'm scared. You're known as the playoff chokers, and while you're much healthier than the Devils and probably a little bit better than the Devils, I mean, the Devils are missing their best player after all. But they've still been playing well without Jack Hughes. And most importantly, in the playoffs, special teams are so important. Being able to score on the man advantage, being able to penalty kill, so important. This Hurricanes team, compared to the Devils team, has a worse power play and a worse penalty kill. Most, I feel like, of the Canes' strength comes from 5-on-5 play, not taking penalties, and keeping you and keeping their defensive structure and keeping you from getting shots. So I think there's a very real chance where if the Devils can force the Hurricanes into mistakes, especially forcing them in the penalties, I think the Devils can surprise a lot of people and knock the Hurricanes off. I just don't quite see it happening without Hughes, and I don't quite see it happen because I think the Hurricanes are a little bit more experienced. But I'm going to say the Devils, look out. If there's a lot of special teams play in this series, I think special teams play because the Devils have the better penalty kill and the better power play. I could definitely see them beating the Hurricanes. I definitely see the Devils getting a game or two off the Hurricanes before the Hurricanes advance. Battle of Ontario, the Maple Leafs and the Senators. It's kind of similar to the others, to the 1-8. This is the 2-7. Really a 1-4 because it's almost like divisional playoffs. But Senators, they're a young team. They're feisty. They play hard. I think one of the things that worries me is Brady Tkachuk for them has been hurt, and he's supposed to be back for the playoffs, but there's still a little bit of rust you're going to have to shake off, and you don't want to be shaking off rust in the playoffs. And I just think this Maple Leafs team is more put together. They're more well-rounded and still very dynamic offensively with those star playmakers they have. And I think between that and Tkachuk shaking the rust off, it's going to be too much for the Senators team to overcome. Maple Leafs win the playoff series, get to the second round, and then the best playoff matchup, the 2 versus 3 in the Atlantic region, the Lightning versus the Panthers, the Battle of Florida. And man, I think this Panthers team could be really, really good. But a certain player is suspended for the first 2 games of the series. They have some guys that have been out for quite a long time now that are coming back for the playoffs, but how do they coalesce? Right? There's been some really good trade deadline pickups by the Panthers that make this team very, very good and very scary. But those trade deadline pickups haven't had a chance to play with some suspended and hurt players that are also very important for the team. And I personally don't want to have to be working on chemistry while I'm in the middle of trying to make a repeat Stanley Cup run. Maybe the Panthers can figure it out. And I think if the Panthers would have just had 10 games together, I would be picking them to make it all the way to the Stanley Cup. I truthfully do. But I'm very worried about the chemistry. I'm worried about guys coming back in the middle of playoff series and trying to play with guys that haven't played before. And while And I also think there's an element of this Panthers team is tired, a lot of them, because of they've had short summers for so long, which is why it's so hard to make a whole bunch of Stanley Cup finals in a row. This Lightning team has done a great job retooling post Stamkos, post, the old core. They still have Kucherov. They still have Hedman. Braden Point, hello. The one thing that scares me with the Lightning, they're going to have great goaltending. You know that they have great offensive play. I'm worried about their depth of scoring. Depth of scoring is so important in the playoffs. Lightning have a lot of guys that can score, but after them, there hasn't been a lot this season. I think it's enough to get them through the first round, and I think they'll find that depth. But in a 7-game battle of Florida, I'm going to pick the home team, Tampa Bay Lightning, over the Florida. And again, I think Florida has a higher ceiling than Tampa. I think I truthfully, um, when I originally put this together, I had the winner of this series between the Lightning and Panthers going to the Stanley Cup final. And in a lot of ways, I still think that's true. And I think if Florida gets by Tampa Bay first round, they're going to beat the Maple Leafs and beat whoever comes out of the Metro. I think the Atlantic is a little bit deeper than the Metro and more playoff experience in the Metro. But I digress. I really like the winner of the series to make a run until I didn't. Tampa Bay Lightning over the Panthers, though. Let's go ahead. I'm just going to go through the entire Eastern Conference instead of doing first round matchups on the West. Capitals, Hurricanes, man, they provided us with two interesting games late season. These two teams don't like each other. That's not new information. It's not a surprise to anybody. I think the Capitals are the more physical team, but I think the Hurricanes are a little bit more consistent when it comes to playing the way they want to play and enforcing their play style. Here's the caveat I'll put on this. I think the Capitals win this in 7 games because the Hurricanes are playoff chokers, and I trust the Capitals a little bit more despite them not having won a playoff series under Carberry. I think they can do it. And I think, and I've liked the way that I've gone back and watched a couple of games and stuff. And I think I like the way the Capitals played against the Hurricanes better than the Hurricanes played against the Capitals. I think the Capitals were a little bit more consistent against the Hurricanes this year than the other way around. Capitals have been playing bad coming into the playoffs, which scares me. But which is why I'm also going to say if the Capitals aren't healthy, as in if Alexi Protas and Logan Thompson do not return, they will not beat the Hurricanes. Hurricanes will advance past the Capitals. I only picked the Capitals because I'm assuming Protas and Logan Thompson are healthy. And if those two guys are healthy, I don't think the Hurricanes can beat them 4 out of 7 games in a series. That's why I have the Capitals advancing, because I think they're going to be healthy. I truthfully think the series hinges upon Logan Thompson and Alexi Protas being healthy for the Washington Capitals, especially because the Capitals have a little bit better power play than the Hurricanes, and both of their penalty kills are pretty good. And again, special teams being so important. But yes, I like the Capitals, assuming they're healthy. If not, I like the Hurricanes, and I don't think it really matters because I don't think either of them are going to get by the winner on the Atlantic side. Maple Leafs and Lightning. Tell me if you've seen that playoff matchup before. And as I was saying earlier, I thought I really, really liked the Lightning to win this. But yeah, I'm going to give it to the Maple Leafs. And I know everybody's going to be in the comments saying, oh, the Maple Leafs don't win in the playoffs. The Maple Leafs suck in the playoffs. They choke in the playoffs. They're not very good in the playoffs. You think they're going to go to the Eastern Conference Finals, especially over the Lightning, a really good team who could very well beat them? Yes. Yes, I do. I think this is the year the Maple Leafs finally put it all together. And I hate to tell you guys, it's really funny to make fun of them, right? For my NFL fans that maybe aren't as knowledgeable about hockey, they're like the Dallas Cowboys of the NHL. But you know what? I don't really care. I think they actually have the team to do it this year. I think they're more balanced. I think they're better defensively. I think they're better in the net. And Austin Matthews doesn't need to do everything. Mitch Marner doesn't need to do everything. Although I think he has a really good playoff series because it's a contract year. I digress. Wouldn't shock me at all if the Lightning beat the Maple Leafs. But again, I have the Maple Leafs finally taking the next step, making an Eastern Conference Finals, where they beat the Capitals simply because Maple Leafs have more star power. They're a little bit deeper. And I don't think some of the Capitals' young players are quite ready to make a Stanley Cup final yet. Now you can see here, this looks a little bit silly up here. Um, I'm probably about to make some people from Alberta mad, and I'm okay with that. Um, Let me explain what I have going on in the Central Division here up in the North. The Blues and the Jets. Obviously, I raved about the Blues earlier. The Jets are completely the better team. Maybe the President's Trophy curse strikes them in the first round, and the Blues stay super hot and advance past. But the Jets just still, again, really, really good team. Probably the best all around team. The question, as it normally is can they be consistent in the playoffs? Unlike last year, can Connor Hellebuck have a good playoff performance? I think they'll be good enough to get by round one. Maybe the Blues take a game, maybe two. I would love to see a Cinderella 2019 type run from the Blues. I don't know if it's going to happen, especially with the side of the bracket they're on, but it would be fun to see. Now, you may see I have the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche winning their series, but they can't because they're against each other. Part of me is mad at the NHL playoff format because I quite frankly think the Stars and the Avalanche are two of the three best teams in the Western Conference, and it's a shame they have to play each other in the first round. So I'm sorry, Jets. I think whoever wins that series beats you in the second round, regardless if it's the Stars or the Avalanche. And quite frankly, I think the Stars and the Avalanche should be a Western Conference Finals matchup or a second round matchup. The fact that the NHL and I wanted to complain about this in the Eastern Conference a little bit too, but I think the Western Conference is really where it shows. The fact that the Stars and the Avalanche, two of the most high-powered, fun, star-powered teams in the NHL, have to face each other in the first round, despite having a high point total, is ridiculous. And I'm sorry if that makes you mad. And Jets fans, I'm sorry if it makes you mad that I did what I did. But, I don't really care that much. I don't think you're making it past the second round. I don't think you're making it into the Western Conference Finals because I think the winner of the Avalanche and Stars do it. So who do I think wins the Avalanche and Stars? Well, probably the team that you can see I have winning the Stanley Cup, making the Western Conference Finals, the Stars. I think this goes 7 games. I think it is going to be, if you can only watch one first round series, watch the Stars and the Avalanche. It's two teams that could win the Stanley Cup this year. It's going to be the best first round series. Stars and Avalanche, Nathan MacKinnon on one side, one of the best players in the NHL. Absolute beast. Can score, can dish it. Perfect example of a modern NHL center. Then on the other side for the Stars, you got Mikko Rantanen, right? Who did he used to play for when they won the Stanley Cup in 2022? Oh, the Avalanche. I'm just saying, that right there is a compelling enough storyline. And then you add in players like Landon Skog and his return to the NHL in time for the playoffs. What a great story there. You add in somebody like Jason Robertson or Jamie Benn or Rupe Hintz for the Stars, right? A lot of big names, a lot of great players, a lot of really interesting and cool storylines. And I'm going to pick the Stars in 7 games and Mikko Rantanen, the second most important player for the Avalanche when they won the Stanley Cup in 2022, is going to be the guy, I think, to put them away. Stars over the Avalanche. And moving on. I'll get out of that division. Wild, another team that's part of that good Central Division. Seeing the Knights in round 1, I just think the Knights are a little bit too balanced. They're a little bit too deep, and I don't think the Wild are going to be able to compete with it. The Wild, I think, are going to have great goaltending in this series, and I think that they're going to be able to compete first and second line. I'm worried about them competing all the way down across all 4 lines. I think the Wild are able to steal the game, but I think the Knights' depth gets them the series win without having to get to a Game 7. Kings and Oilers, they have matched up how many times now in a row? This is the 4th year in a row they've matched up in the first round. Who's won every single matchup? The Oilers. Who's going to win it this year? The Oilers. Listen, Kings have had a great season. They're the 2nd seed out there in the Pacific Division. Not only are they the 2nd seed, they're a really good defensive team, as they normally are. And they're getting some pretty good goaltending from former Stanley Cup champion Darcy Kemper. Want to know what they're not going to, what they don't have? Star power. They don't have enough consistent offense, in my opinion. They don't have anybody that can match up with the offensive prowess of both Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. The Oilers' power play is phenomenal. Even if the Kings' penalty kill is phenomenal, I just think even if it takes 7 games, eventually the Oilers' star power and skill is going to outlast the Kings. Oilers over the Kings. Let's go back up top. Again, I already explained why I have the Stars and the Avalanche. It's a protest against the NHL for making them play in the first round. Um, but in reality, I have this being the Dallas Stars against the Winnipeg Jets. And maybe it's because I picked the Dallas Stars to win at the post trade at the Four Nations break update. I picked the Dallas Stars to win the Stanley Cup. Um, at the trade deadline update, I even had the Dallas Stars running down the Jets despite the Jets' big league. That didn't happen. I acknowledge that. But I just can't get away from this Dallas Stars team. I think that they beat this Jets team, and I don't even think it takes 7 games. I think it takes 6. I think the Stars team is going to get to the playoffs and they're going to run. Defensively, I think the Jets are a little bit better. I'm worried about Hellebuck. I think so much of this is going to ride on Hellebuck and his ability to play the way he did in the regular season. But I think eventually the Stars, they've made the Western Conference Finals 3 years in a row. Their head coach, Pete DeBoer, undefeated in his career in Game 7s. I think that could be very important this run. I'm going to pick the Stars over the Jets, but just barely. And Oilers and Knights. I almost had the Knights over the Oilers. Purely because I'm very worried about the Oilers goaltending. But I think it balances out this postseason. And if you remember last postseason, he got benched before coming back and actually playing well. Maybe something like that happens this year. But I think this Oilers defense has actually been better this year than it was last year when they came within 1 game of winning the Stanley Cup. And the offense isn't going anywhere for this Oilers team. And I think that defense continues to play well. I think eventually the goaltending figures it out for the Oilers, even if it's not going to be as good as the Knights or maybe even the Jets if they see them. I think it'll be enough, and I think the Oilers get by the Knights, leaving us with an Oilers and Stars Western Conference Finals matchup that I predicted at the beginning of the season. And maybe I got married to the idea, and that's why I still have it now. But you know what? I still think that they might be the 2 best teams in the Western Conference. The Avalanche would like a word, the Jets would like a word, maybe even the Knights. But regardless, I think those are the 2 best teams in the Western Conference Finals. The 2 best teams, and they end up in the Western Conference Finals, where I think the Stars, it goes to a Game 7, and then Pete DeBoer remembers, oh, I don't lose these. And you know what? I'm not going to start now. 7-game Western Conference Finals between the Stars and the Oilers. Man, that kind of sounds familiar, at least a little bit. It should, right? Um, Stars get revenge for last season's elimination by the Oilers. They go to the Stanley Cup Final, where I have them facing, I know, guys, I can't believe it either, the Toronto Maple Leafs. But yet again, I think they're going to be just good enough to do it. And for the second time, nobody from the Metro is making the Stanley Cup. In the top 4, those Metro teams, I don't think they're good enough. The winner of the Eastern Conference representative is coming out of the Atlantic, and I think the Maple Leafs are set up to potentially do that. So Maple Leafs and Stars, who do I have winning? The Stars. I mean, listen, they still are the Maple Leafs to an extent. I think Toronto fans will take making to the Stanley Cup if they don't win it. I think the Stars are primed to do it. They keep almost getting there. They're very firmly in their window. This team is super deep. I think they have a little bit better goaltending than the Maple Leafs. I'll tell you what, though, the top 6 skaters on each team, those top 2 lines, would be a great watch between the Maple Leafs and Stars because, man, are they packed with star power from literally all over the world. I think the Stars are a little bit better, and I think that they're a little bit better depth-wise and in those top 6. And I think just that little bit better goaltending, that little bit better star power, that little bit better in the top 6, that little bit better depth adds up to a Stanley Cup victory for the Dallas Stars. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Let me know what you think about my predictions. Let me know who you think is winning the Stanley Cup. I know nobody agrees out with me, right? Because I have the Stars and the Maple Leafs there. All the Jets fans will be there. All the Leafs haters will be there. So let me know why I'm wrong in the comments. And don't dislike the video because I may not agree with your predictions. That's not a fair reason. If you dislike the video, tell me why you dislike it in the comments. All right. I'm open for discussion and debate. I promise. I hope you found some way to enjoy this. Or maybe you're a Stars fan and you really enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments. Let me know your predictions, your hot takes, some players that you think might decide and determine this playoff race, things of the sort. I hope everybody has a great weekend watching the opening of the playoffs for both the NBA and the NHL. Have a good Easter if you celebrate that. Again, another fun weekend. I feel like I'm saying that every weekend, but there is reasons I feel like you can get excited every weekend. Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking times out of your days, weeks, and lives. Everybody, stay safe. Have a great weekend. Peace.